Okay, well, we're entering the mountains. Unfortunately, it's like this place we were going to is on a road that I'm very familiar with. I was kind of hoping we were going to go somewhere. Yeah, thank you. 罗马，这是最好玩的路，爸爸。这个路每一年有2个3个人会骑摩托车死掉，这个一条。she's nervous about going on a mountain road. That's what it's like, a curvy mountain road. She says, "Oh, I'm scared. I don't like to ride on mountain roads. I only ride in the city." So I just told her that there's a few people die on this road each year, which is true. Actually, the last person to die on this road that I know of was a woman on a motorcycle. So, do I have any topics? I think I had some. Okay, let's. I got a topic. Let's talk about 600cc motorcycle as a first bike specifically. I've already got many videos covering this topic, but just at different angles. So this time we'll do it from the. Instead of talking about what's the best first bike and why I think you should get that bike, let's talk about specifically whether or not you should get a 600cc race bike, which is what I don't know. It's what the majority of people, I think, set their sights on. Because I get so many. Whoa! Did you guys see that? That blue car was totally in the oncoming lane for like no reason. That was nuts. And because it's Taiwan, nobody even bats an eye. No one even looks back. Like, I'm pretty certain that yellow car had to swerve out of the way in their own lane to avoid hitting that guy head on. Yeah, it's gorgeous over here. See? Yeah, okay, so 600cc motorcycle. I'm so sick of this. I'm just sick to death of this question, because I get messages like freaking daily about, yeah, I want to buy a GSXR 600, or I want to buy a CBR 600, and blah, 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 blah. And do you really think, it's too much, or don't you think that blah, blah, blah? And then I get people leaving comments under my videos that aren't helpful, and on the comments that are like, oh, it depends on the rider. Oh, if you just go easy on the throttle, it's fine. And all these other completely stupid bullshit fucking comments, and I'm pissing off a lot of my viewers, because there's a lot of you that agree with that, and I know you do. But it's just irresponsible. Even if you think it's true, you shouldn't fucking type it, because it's irresponsible, because you're gonna get someone fucking killed. A 600cc sports bike is a racing bike. It's built and designed for racing. And if you've got no experience on a motorcycle, buying a race bike as your first bike would be about as intelligent as a father buying a Ferrari for his 16-year-old daughter, or buying like yeah. It's like buying a full out race car for your 16-year-old daughter or son. And like, who would do that? It's just so stupid. And it's the exact same thing. You wouldn't buy your, I'm repeating myself, but but that's what I've been doing for the last freaking 5 or 6 years on YouTube, is repeating myself about 600cc motorcycles. Like, the first time my first 600cc sports bike was a CBR 600RR, and I had years of riding experience under my belt. And within a week of riding it, I got into situations where it was only my years of experience that got me out of those situations. Like, I put myself into close calls there were close calls that I got out of by using my years of experience. And without those years of experience, I would have been toast. Like, an example would be, I was on the CBR, and then I was on a straightaway. So I open up the gas, and it's so quick that within no time, you're doing like, 4 times the speed limit, and you're approaching the end of the road where it turns. And then it just happens too quick because you don't really realize how quick this thing's going to go when you give it gas. So the next thing you know, you're shooting at a corner doing 4 times the speed limit. And every part of your body is and 90% of your brain is screaming out, hit the brakes, hit the brakes. But the problem is, when you brake on a motorcycle, you go straight. And I was already too close to the corner to do that. So what I had to do was I had to just boom, slam the bike down, get my foot rubbing against the road and just take that corner at high speed. And it was scary, but I knew I had a chance of doing it. I knew I had a better chance of taking the corner than I did of braking. And I did. But it was, if you were a new rider, you wouldn't be able to just slam a bike down and take a corner with, full lean like that. And there's other examples. I'm not gonna, you give it gas and the front tire comes off the ground really high or something, and you might panic and brake too hard. And then slamming it back down, that could crash you. Head shake with the faster accelerating bikes. Head shake sometimes is a problem, and people, it's kind of with experience you get used to it. And then people talk about, well, yeah, well, just get a fast bike, but then go easy on it. So it's like, okay, you're going to spend a shitload of money to get a really expensive racing bike, and then you're going to putt around on it like a pussy because you don't know what you're doing. And it's like, well, that sounds like fun. Why not instead get yourself like a smaller bike for cheap and drive the shit out of it? That's 100 times more fun. What do you think would be more fun? Buying a beater car that's fast, okay? Like you're talking like an older 5-liter car, and it's all, a bit beat up, but it's fast and it's fun. And learning to drive in that, where you're just, you're gunning it, you're taking corners, you're learning how to drift. The odd time you'll you're in a parking lot and you'll smash into a curb or something, but you don't care. It's a beater to begin with, and you're having tons of fun. What would be more fun, learning in that car, or trying to learn in like a Ferrari, where you could never do anything? You're just putting around, trying not to hurt the car because it's too freaking expensive. It's just there's and I've said this before many times. Every professional racer, like MotoGP, the best racers on the planet Earth, started out on a 150cc motorcycle or less. Okay? And then, so we all know that. We all know that to be a fact. And maybe there's one out of like 100 that didn't, but whatever. It's as a general rule, it holds true. So they've all, they all started on like 150cc or less. And then how can you know that and still taxi with a tree? How can you know that and still, tell people, yeah, go out and get yourself a 600cc racing bike as your first bike, when all the best, most experienced, top riders in the world started out on 150 or less? It's, where is the logic? And not only that, here's a whole different way to look at it. A 600cc motorcycle is boring as hell in comparison to like a 250. Or if you like speed, you love speed, you gotta have speed. I've got a really small penis, so I just gotta get a lot of speed. I can't possibly get a smaller bike to begin with. Okay, fine. Get yourself a 250cc 2-stroke. It will accelerate on par with a 600cc 4-stroke. And it'll still be light, and it'll be a lot cheaper for repairs. And then you have the advantage of it being light and agile. I actually went from a 250cc 2-stroke to my CBR 600RR. And the first thing I noticed when I got on the CBR 600 was that it handled like shit. it's a fucking cow. It was disgusting how slowly and unresponsive the bike was. And keep in mind, we're talking about one of the most responsive bikes in the world. But in comparison to a 250, especially a 250 two-stroke, it handles like a fucking a fire truck. It was disgusting. I was like, okay, I just sold my 250cc racer to get this, and it just, But with time, I got, you adjust and you get used to it. It still handles well, obviously. It just nowhere near as well as a 250. And then you get, and you can get yourself a 150cc two-stroke, and those things, they fly. They're fun, man. And you can learn how to race on it. You can learn, you can take corners and practice getting your knee down and stuff. Try getting a 600cc bike as your first bike, and within a month, get your knee down on a corner. If you can do that, then I'll be impressed. On a 150, it'd be fairly easy to do because it's a 150. It's light. It's easy to handle. If on the odd chance you do crash, you're not out a few $1,000s just for plastics. It's just. And plus, like my first bike ever was a 400cc bike, and I had so much fun on it. And I drove that thing like a fucking mental case. I took ramps. Like within a week, not a week, but within the first month, I was standing up on the seat. I was taking ramps. I'm getting my picture taken. Hello, quick, take a picture. That poor guy, he's hanging out. So yeah, within the first month, I was just being because I was young and dumb. I was 18, 19 years old, and that's another reason. If you're young, you're too stupid to own a 600. Unless you're a really fucking boring person. And then, yeah, okay, get a 600, drive it like a fucking pussy, and you'll be fine. Because you're boring and lame and you got no balls, and it's like get yourself something small and then learn how to have fun on a bike. And then trade up once you know what you're doing. And then plus then you have the fun of trading up. If you start on a 600, there's not really anywhere to go from there. Because personally, I would never, ever get a 1000. I find them, well, that's a whole different topic, but I dislike them. I find them boring and slow and too quiet. Yeah, I dislike 1000s. There are a lot of racetracks, not in Taiwan, real racetracks in America, professional racetracks, where the lap record is held by 600s. The 600s are very often, arguably, quicker than 1000s. And they're better geared. So I have no fondness, no desire to own a 1000. Yeah, so with that, and with all that in mind, yeah, so it's just, and then, yeah, so yeah, like trading up. You start with the 600. There's nowhere really to trade a 600 race bike. There's nothing really to trade up to. So congratulations. That's your whole motorcycle experience. You buy one bike and then you just stick with it. Maybe you could trade to a different 600. Or you could like start off with like a 150 and then learn how to ride well quickly, and then trade up to a 400 or something, and then master that, and then trade up to. Then you get something to look forward to over the years. It's fun. I know people are always typing in shit. They're always sending in messages like, well, my brother's roommate's nephew's cousin, he got himself a 600cc as a first bike, or he got himself a Hayabusa as a first bike, and he's fine, and now he does racetrack days, and he's quick, and it's like, yeah, okay, I believe you. It's like, they're like 1 in 100, 1 in a million, whatever. But it's like, just because you know some guy who beat the odds and he's the 1 in 100 freak example, does that mean you should go online and tell everyone else to do it too? You know what I mean? Whoa! Don't go in the ditch. You see that? Just because you know some guy who fluked out, and it was a good experience for him. And the thing is, you get people who say in the comments, yeah, my first bike was a 600cc, and I don't regret it, and I'm having lots of fun, and I'm riding well now. And it's like, okay, but you know what? If your first bike had been a 150 or a 250 or even a 400, you would have had more fun, because you would have been able to do what I did, and like just have fun and stress-free fun. My first motorcycle cost me, I think, $500 American. So worst case scenario, aside from physical harm to myself, worst case scenario is I'd be out $500. Like, who gives a shit? Like I could just have fun on it, and it was stress-free fun. I could just drive like a mental case, and it was fun. And if I'd bought myself an expensive 600cc racing bike, it wouldn't have happened. So, for the umpteenth time, I really disagree with getting a racing bike as your first bike, because for so many different reasons. It's such common sense to not get a racing bike as your first bike, that in most countries, most European countries, it's the law not to be able to. You have to start on something smaller and work your way up, because it's just common sense. But you get these few countries where there are no laws restricting first motorcycles, and these people go out and they buy these big bikes as their first bikes. And yes, it's like. So to summarize, yes, it's possible you could get a 600cc bike and never crash it and learn to ride just fine, but you'd be having less fun, you'd have more stress, you'd be riding slower to begin with, you'd be learning slower because you wouldn't be able to experiment as much, and your bike wouldn't have as much forgiveness. That's another thing. It's a term used often in motorcycling when they're talking about smaller bikes or beginner bikes, learning, a smaller bike is more forgiving, and what that means is you can make a mistake and the bike won't crash, as opposed to the more powerful, more precision bikes, where if you make a mistake, there's a much higher chance you will crash. And if you're trying to learn how to ride, and especially if you're trying to learn how to ride aggressively, don't you want a bike that can forgive a little as opposed to one that can't? So anytime someone says to me, yeah, I got a 1,000cc as my first bike and I'm fine, it's just okay. Well, then you didn't have fun. You didn't. Yeah, except and on the odd chance that they did get a big bike and they did have fun and they did ride it aggressive and they did learn quick. Well, it was a fluke. They're like a one in 1,000, 1 in a million that did. So it still doesn't apply to anyone other than them. It's still not something they should go out and tell other people to do. Like I've ridden motorcycles. I've ridden motorcycles blind drunk. In one of my private series, I explain in detail. It's an older series and it's gone now. I'm in Canada and I show you a road. I did the entire road. It's a long road and I do many blocks, many, and I did it on the sidewalk, doing triple the speed limit, blind drunk with a passenger. And I was high too. I was like drunk and on mushrooms, and I was and I was doing 180 on the sidewalk. And every time the road would meet another road, the sidewalk would slow. The sidewalks are wheelchair friendly, so every time the sidewalk would slope down to a road, my bike would bottom out because I was going so fast, and the sidewalk going down to the road would cause my bike to like bottom out and smash. Like the bottom of my bike would actually hit the road. It was a cruiser. And then when I'd go up the next sidewalk, like a half a second later, I'd hit the next sidewalk and go up it. And because I just finished bottoming out, my bike would hit the next sidewalk and spring up and get air. So every time I was riding on the sidewalk, and every time I'd cross over a side road, my bike would bottom out and then jump about 2-3 feet in the air, and then it would continue on like that. And I was stoned and I was drunk and I was flying along. And guess what? I lived. And was it fun? Yeah, sure it was fun. And the guy in the back was my passenger. Was a guy at the time, and he was petrified. He was so scared that when I got home and I got off the bike, he literally could not move or talk. It was just like a cartoon. He was frozen. His body was stuck on the back of the bike. He was holding on behind him. I had a rear passenger thing, and he was holding on with his hands behind his back, and he was gripping it like with with a death grip. And I was talking to him, and he couldn't. He was also like high and drunk, I think. And he couldn't. He literally physically could not respond. I had to like leave him on my motorcycle and go in my house and like sit down and be like, I had other roommates, and I'm like, yeah, Chris is still outside. He's stuck on my bike. He's too scared to get off. You know, so yeah, I rode a motorcycle on the sidewalk, triple the speed limit, drunk and high, and it was fun, and I'm okay. So does that mean I can go around on other people's videos and leave comments saying, yeah, get drunk and ride, yeah, get high? No, of course not, because I was a one in a million. The chances of me, it was just a fluke, and that's exactly the same as other people going out who buy race bikes and don't crash and learn how to ride well on them, and then they go around telling other people, yeah, you can do it too. That's about as responsible as me telling other people, yeah, get drunk and high and go do triple the speed limit on the sidewalk too. I got lucky, and if you learned how to ride on a 600 or 1000, you got lucky. So, to close this video is not very funny. It's mostly just me ranting, isn't it? To close this video up, I just want to say that my dog is old, and she bit someone today, and I'm not happy with her. To close this video up, I want to say I don't think a 600cc motorcycle is a good first choice as a motorcycle.